Now it's time to start talking about the cutaneous mycoses, starting with Malassezia furfur, which causes the disease pityriasis versicolor. It's important to know both of these names, as you'll see test questions using both terms. And is it just me, or do the words Malassezia and versicolor sound kind of Italian? Well, that's why we've chosen to center our scene around Malassezia's Italian restaurant. So let's start drawing out Malassezia's Italian restaurant, and we'll give it its special sauce, its famous sauce, the Versi di Colori, which may or may not be Italian, but it sounds like versicolor, and it also sounds Italian, so it's good enough for our scene. Now, one of the patrons of this restaurant is a woman wearing a fur coat, for furfur. Get it? So we have Malassezia furfur, which causes pityriasis versicolor. Enough with the naming and setting of the scene. Let's get down to talking about this fungus. The most prominent characteristic of Malassezia furfur is the fact that it has a spaghetti and meatball appearance on KOH prep of skin scrapings, which is yet another reason we went with an Italian theme. So here we're going to have the lady ordering a plate of spaghetti and meatballs. The chef is sprinkling on some KOH salt onto the spaghetti to remind you of how it's diagnosed, by KOH prep. Now, Malassezia is part of normal skin flora and generally thrives under hot and humid conditions. To illustrate this, we're going to draw in heat lamps, which are meant to keep the food warm. However, the chef is getting sweaty being in the kitchen next to all of these heat lamps all day, and the fungus is going to take a toll on him as it converts to its disease form with the humidity. And thus, the fungus is going to have opportunity to take its toll on him in this hot and humid environment. So Malassezia, as we said before, causes pityriasis versicolor in healthy individuals, which essentially is just hypopigmented or hyperpigmented patches. It's not too devastating. Rather, it's just a simple dermatologic annoyance for otherwise healthy patients. In fact, it isn't even itchy like the other cutaneous mycoses you're going to see. The patches are generally located more on the back and on the chest, especially in those who spend a lot of time in the sun. To demonstrate these patches, we're going to draw both light and dark colored patches of sauce on our chef's back and chest. So how exactly do these patches form? The mechanism of action of this fungus is through lipid degradation, which produces acid that damages melanocytes, thus causing pigmentation problems. To remind you of its lipophilic nature, we have here a broken bottle of olive oil, and olive oil clearly being a lipid. Being a cutaneous mycoses, this fungus generally remains confined to the skin. It's important to know which layer of the skin the fungus stays in. It's the stratum corneum, the most superficial layer. To illustrate this point, we'll have a lasagna sitting down here on the counter. It has layers, just like our skin, and you'll notice that the top layer has bits of corn sprinkled on it, for corneum. So it makes sense that if the fungus is sitting on our skin, it infects the top layer of the skin. But in case you have to remember the term stratum corneum, you have this corn conveniently sprinkled on the top of the lasagna. While this is mainly just a dermatologic issue in most people, it can actually be very devastating for people that are immunocompromised. We aren't going to go into many details about the systemic effects in the immunocompromised. It isn't really heavily tested. However, you may see the association of Malassezia fungemia in neonates that are receiving TPN, or total parenteral nutrition. Along with TPN is a lipid infusion that travels through catheters into the body, and neonates in the NICU often receive this. Remember that the fungus loves lipids, and now with a catheter that allows access through the blood, the fungus can grow in the lipid transfusions, enter the body, and cause sepsis and thrombocytopenia. It can also cause problems in adults receiving lipid transfusions as well, but symptoms are usually not as severe. To remind you of this, we're going to give the woman a baby, and the baby's going to be slurping up a piece of spaghetti, and this will symbolize the catheter-like line that enters the body. Treatment of this cutaneous mycoses is through topical selenium sulfide, more commonly known by its portmanteau of Selsun Blue. It works by promoting the shedding of the stratum corneum, which, remember, is where the fungus resides. To illustrate that selenium sulfate, or Selsun Blue, is the treatment for Malassezia, we're going to draw a stained glass window of a blue sun for Selsun blue. And that's it. That wraps up Malassezia furfur.